Most chord progressions fail before the second chord, not because the notes are wrong, but because the writer is stacking shapes without deciding where the music is going. A progression is a musical sentence. It can establish home, move away, create pressure, and return. When that direction is clear, the bass, melody, and hook become much easier to write. In this lesson, we're starting with a completely blank piano roll. We'll choose a key, build a small chord palette, give those chords different jobs, and connect them with smooth voice leading. Then we'll turn the harmony into rhythm, attach a bass line, write a melody over the chords, reduce that melody into a hook, and humanize the MIDI without destroying the groove. The examples use C major because the white notes make the relationships easy to see. The method works in any key, and these are tools, not laws. Different genres use harmony in different ways. Your ears still make the final decision. Here's the destination, a 4-bar loop that feels intentional before any expensive sound design or mixing trick. Harmony creates the root. Rhythm creates the motion. Melody gives the listener a path to follow. Humanization turns the grid into a performance. Let's build that musical sentence one layer at a time. Start by choosing a key and limiting the note pool. A constraint is useful because it removes hundreds of meaningless choices. In C major, the notes are C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. If we build a 3-note chord on every scale degree by taking one note, skipping the next, and taking the next 2 alternating notes, we get 7 diatonic triads. Those chords are C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and B diminished. You do not need to memorize them all before writing. Draw the scale across several octaves in your piano roll, mute it, and use those notes as a visual guide. Now every chord you build begins inside one coherent collection. This does not mean outside notes are forbidden. Borrowed chords, chromatic passing tones, and altered harmony can create beautiful color. But first establish the sound of the key. If everything is surprising, nothing feels surprising. For the first pass, use plain triads in a comfortable middle register. Keep the bass out of the chord voicing for now. Play each chord and notice its emotional character, but don't treat major as automatically happy or minor as automatically sad. Tempo, rhythm, register, sound choice, and context all change the result. The goal is simply to create a small, understandable palette that you can shape with intention. Next, give the chords jobs. In tonal music, it's useful to hear 3 broad kinds of motion. Tonic feels like home or relative stability. Predominant moves away from home and prepares more motion. Dominant creates pressure that often wants to resolve back toward tonic. In a basic major key framework, the 1 chord is the clearest home. The 6 minor chord can also feel stable, but with a different color. The 2 minor and 4 major chords often create movement away from home. The 5 major chord has a strong pull back toward 1 because it contains the leading tone, the note just below the tonic. These categories are listening tools, not universal rules. Pop, hip-hop, electronic music, modal music, and film music often loop without a traditional dominant resolution. A progression can deliberately avoid home to create suspension. Still, asking what each chord is doing prevents random selection. Try this simple sentence: 1, then 4, then 5, then back to 1. Hear the stability, departure, pressure, and return. Now replace the first one with 6 minor. The same path feels more reflective because the loop begins from a different center of gravity. Before adding more chords, describe the emotional route in plain language. Does the loop settle, climb, circle, or hang unresolved? If you cannot describe the direction, simplify the progression until you can hear it. Now build a 4-chord framework. Roman numerals help because they describe scale relationships rather than fixed note names. A 1-5-6-4 progression in C major is C major, G major, A minor, and F major. Move the same pattern to another major key, and the relationship stays intact. Treat this as a framework, not a magic formula. Duplicate the 4 bars and change one variable at a time. First, change the order. 1-6-4-5 creates a different direction, even though the chord palette is nearly identical. Next, keep the order but change harmonic rhythm. Hold the first chord for 2 bars and let the other 3 move faster. Then restore the timing and substitute only 1 chord. Changing one variable lets you hear cause and effect. If you replace 3 chords, change the rhythm, invert everything, and switch the sound at once, you won't know which decision improved the idea. Loop the progression at low volume and sing or hum over it. You're listening for two things: direction inside the 4 bars and the quality of the return from bar 4 to bar 1. The loop boundary is part of the composition. A powerful 4th chord can make the 1st chord feel inevitable, surprising, or deliberately unresolved. Keep 2 versions, the simplest loop and your favorite variation. That comparison will keep later decisions honest. With the framework working, add harmonic color 1 note at a time. Start with 7th chords. A 7th adds another alternating scale tone above a triad. Depending on the chord and context, that extra note can sound warm, soft, tense, jazzy, open, or unresolved. Do not turn every triad into a 7th chord automatically. If every chord has the same density, the progression may lose contrast. Try adding color only to the chord that needs attention. A major 7th on the home chord can soften the arrival. A dominant 7th on the 5 chord can increase its pull toward 1. A minor 7th can make a minor chord feel broader and less stark. Suspensions create a different effect. Replace the 3rd temporarily with the 2nd or 4th, then resolve it if the phrase wants that motion. Because the 3rd usually tells us whether a chord is major or minor, delaying it creates useful ambiguity. Keep the sound and register in mind. A dense chord played low can become muddy because close frequencies compete. Move color tones upward, spread the voicing, or let the bass carry the root while the chord instrument focuses on the 3rd, 7th, and other defining tones. The rule is simple: earn every extra note, bypass the color tone. If the progression loses personality, keep it. If nothing meaningful changes, remove it and save the space for melody. The chord names may be correct while the movement still sounds awkward. That is a voicing problem. Voice leading means connecting the individual notes inside one chord to the notes inside the next chord in a coherent way. Start with common tones. If 2 neighboring chords share a note, keep that note in the same register when it serves the sound. Then move the remaining voices by the smallest useful interval. For example, moving from C major to A minor, let C and E stay in place while G moves to A. The harmony changes, but 2 internal voices remain stable. Inversions make this possible. Root position puts the chord root at the bottom. 1st and 2nd inversions place another chord tone at the bottom. The chord identity remains, but its shape and connection change. Instead of dragging every chord back to the same root position octave, choose the inversion that creates the line you want. Smooth is not always better. Large parallel jumps can sound bold and deliberate. The point is to choose the motion, not accept whatever shape appears after copying notes. Solo the top note of each chord. That line acts like a hidden melody. Then solo the middle voice. If each line feels singable or intentionally angular, the progression will usually feel more connected. Good voice leading turns vertical blocks into several horizontal stories happening at once. Before adding more pitches, write the rhythm of the chords. Harmonic rhythm is the rate and placement of chord changes. A progression with 1 chord per bar tells a different story from the same chords changing twice per bar, anticipating the downbeat or leaving a full beat of silence. Begin with long blocks so you can hear the harmony, then shorten the MIDI notes. Try a repeated rhythmic shape across every chord, a strong attack, a short rest, and a lighter response. Next, let 1 chord sustain while the others stay rhythmic. Contrast makes sections breathe. Pay attention to note endings. If every chord overlaps the next, the performance may smear. If every note ends at the exact same grid line, the part may feel clipped. Adjust duration according to the instrument. A plucked sound can use short notes because its envelope supplies the decay. A pad may need intentional gaps, so the release tail has space. Anticipation is powerful. Move a chord slightly before the bar line and the music leans forward. Delay a change and it can feel heavy or relaxed. But keep structural anchors clear. Moving every attack removes the reference that makes syncopation feel exciting. Mute the drums and listen to whether the chord rhythm still implies motion. Then bring the drums back. The harmony should cooperate with the groove instead of fighting for the same rhythmic space. Now connect the bass to the harmony. Begin with roots. Put the root of each chord in a lower octave on the most important beat. This makes the progression easy to hear and gives you a clean reference before writing a more active line. Next, decide what the bass should contribute. If the chords are rhythmically busy, the bass may need long, stable notes. If the chords are sustained, the bass can create movement with repeated notes, octaves, fifths, or short approaches into the next root. An inversion in the bass changes how the whole chord feels. Putting the third or fifth below the chord can create a stepwise bass line and a softer sense of arrival. Use that effect deliberately, because listeners often hear the lowest note as a powerful statement of harmonic direction. Approach notes work best when they point somewhere. A note a half step or whole step above or below the next target can create momentum, especially near the end of a phrase. Keep it short enough that the destination remains clear. Watch the low register. A left-hand chord voicing and a bass sound occupying the same octave can become cloudy. Remove the chord root, move the chord up, or simplify one layer, then check the bass with the kick. They can hit together for weight or alternate for space, but the relationship should be intentional. The bass is not a duplicate of the chords, it is the foundation and a melodic voice of its own. With harmony and bass working, write a melody over the chords. Start smaller than you think. Choose a 2 or 3 note motif with a clear rhythm. Rhythm often creates recognition before pitch does. Chord tones are stable landing points because they belong to the harmony underneath. On the C major chord, C, E, and G are strong options. When the chord changes, you can keep a shared tone, move to a nearby chord tone, or deliberately hold a note that creates tension before resolving it. Use scale tones to connect those targets. Stepwise motion is easy to follow. Repeated notes create focus. Leaps create emphasis when they have a clear destination. A passing tone does not need to belong to the chord at every instant. Its meaning comes from how it connects stable notes across time. Place the motif once, then repeat its rhythm over the next chord while changing only 1 or 2 pitches. This creates family resemblance without mechanical copying. Try ending the second phrase on a different note so it sounds like a response. If the melody feels trapped by the progression, reverse the process. Move one chord to support the best melodic note. Melody and harmony can lead each other. The goal is not to prove that the chords came first. The goal is to make the vertical harmony and horizontal line sound like they belong to the same musical thought. A hook is the part the listener can recognize and anticipate. It might be melodic, rhythmic, lyrical, or based on sound design. Here we'll develop a melodic MIDI hook from the short motif we already wrote. First, reduce the motif to its identity. Which rhythm, contour, or interval makes it recognizable? Keep that core and remove notes that merely fill space. A 3-note cell with a distinctive rhythm can be stronger than a non-stop 8-bar melody. Repeat the cell enough for the listener to learn it, then vary one feature, change the final pitch, shift the last repetition up an octave. Start the response slightly later, stretch one note. The variation should feel related, not like a new idea interrupting the phrase. Use the chords to recolor the hook. The same melody note can feel stable over one chord and tense over another. That changing relationship creates interest without rewriting the hook every bar. Leave space around the important phrase. If chords, bass, counter melody, and percussion all make their busiest move at the same time, the hook loses focus. Simplify the supporting layers when the hook arrives. Finally, test the hook away from the original sound. Play it on a plain piano or simple synth. If the rhythm and contour still read, the musical idea is carrying its weight. Sound design can enhance identity, but it should not be the only thing holding the phrase together. Now humanize the MIDI with intention. Humanization is not a button that makes every note randomly early, late, loud, or soft. It is phrasing, deciding which notes lead, which notes relax, and which details repeat consistently enough to create a groove. Start with velocity. On many instruments, velocity can affect loudness, timbre, articulation, or a combination, depending on how the instrument is programmed. Create a clear accent pattern rather than random values. Strong beats can carry more weight, pickup notes can be lighter, repeated chords can rise or fall across a phrase. Next, inspect timing. Keep important kick, bass, and chord attacks aligned when the music needs impact. Move selected notes only a small amount when you want a laid-back or pushed feel. Apply the same relationship across repetitions so it becomes groove rather than error. Then adjust note length. Shorten repeated stabs, connect legato lines, and vary releases so the part breathes with the sound's envelope. For polyphonic chords, you can offset selected notes very slightly to suggest a performed attack, but avoid turning every chord into an obvious roll unless that is the style. Compare against the fully quantized version after each pass. If the changes improve direction and feeling, keep them. If the groove becomes vague, reduce them. Intentional imperfection needs a stable reference. Let's run the complete blank project workflow one more time. First, choose a key and create a limited note pool. Second, build simple diatonic triads so you can hear the palette clearly. Third, decide the emotional route. Where is home? Where does the progression move? And where does it create pressure or suspension? Fourth, build a short Roman numeral framework and change one variable at a time. Fifth, add sevenths or suspensions only when they create useful color. Sixth, improve the connection with inversions, common tones, and intentional voice leading. Seventh, write harmonic rhythm. Use attacks, rests, anticipation, and note length to make the chords participate in the groove. Eighth, establish the bass with roots before adding inversions or approach notes. Ninth, write a small melodic motif using stable chord tones and nearby connecting notes. 10th, turn that motif into a hook through repetition, selective variation, and space. 11th, humanize velocity, timing, and duration according to the phrase and the receiving instrument. Finally, simplify, mute layers, remove notes. Make sure the song still has a clear direction when the sound design is plain. That is how to write chord progressions as part of a complete MIDI composition, not as isolated blocks. Harmony creates expectation, bass gives it weight, melody gives it a path, the hook gives it memory, performance detail gives it life. Start with 4 bars, make every layer answer the same musical sentence, and finish the idea before opening another blank project.